The flow is back, but Doc and Luis are on their way to Podcast Summit this week in Atlanta, Georgia. So I looped Nat into joining me in today's special episode. Hey, Nat.
Hey, everybody.
If you don't know Nat is my co-host on my personal Just for Fun podcast, the VHS Club. So if you like 90s movies and 80s movies and all things retro and nostalgic in VHS, you'll have to join us over there. The description is in the link is in the description. We're rusty today, Nat.
It's a 2 coffee day.
It's a 2 coffee day. I think I'm on 3 coffees today, so I've already exceeded the 2 coffee day, but you'll have to sip coffee for me. Yeah, Andy says that you, Nat, are Doc 2.0. Let's not make Doc cry in this episode. We're gonna pretend. we're gonna pretend that Doc is here with us in spirit. Yeah. And I've given Luis a break today, so he's hanging out in the chat. He was like all keen to produce, and I'm like, you know what? No, I got it. You pack up and get all ready for Podcast Summit. So thanks, Luis, for always being there and going above and beyond. So this is a kind of a mailbag episode, I guess. We don't have anything planned. We are just here and available to answer any and all questions related to podcasting. Don't ask me all those crazy tech questions about Ecamm. This is a podcasting specific Q&A. But I figured if we didn't get a ton of questions, we could talk a little bit about our podcast and how we got started and some of the things that maybe you didn't know, Nat, as you were looped into and forced into this process.
Yeah, small backstory. Katie was like, we're going to do a podcast. I'm like, I listened to 2 podcasts about murder. Like, I know nothing about podcasts. And she's like, doesn't matter. Just come on and we'll just do it. I'll teach you as we go. And I was like, okay. So I came in like completely not knowing anything about this.
Yeah.
So it was not as daunting or scary as I thought it was.
What was the thing that you thought would be the scariest? Was it just the idea of being on camera, or was it something else?
Oh, being on camera, that because I am an introvert by nature, and by our societal standards, I have to extrovert. So so that is a whole other ball game. Like, that's just, I like being behind the camera, not in front of the camera. So yeah, that I just had to push aside, but that's life. For actual podcasting, I figured I just needed to be so much more prepared and have like research and like do all this, other stuff. But then I quickly realized, I'm like, oh, I'm chatting with my best friend like we normally do about movies that we were going to watch anyways and would have chatted about anyways. So it made it so much easier because we picked a topic that was just part of our life anyways. So it's just us hanging out and us having fun. So it took off that pressure. And yeah, I still do research because it's me. But it was a lot less than I thought it would be. Like, there was a lot less extra work other than the logging on than I anticipated. So that was like a huge, wonderful surprise. But it depends on your topic.
It's true. That's actually a really good point, because we say often here on this show that it does really matter what your niche or topic, or the what kind of content that you're creating in a podcast space, because it's not easy. That's not the right, like, it's not an easy thing to do. But if you're passionate about it, and if you feel like you could speak about this topic, even if you like haven't done any research or haven't dived deep into the topic, that should be what you're shooting for if you're thinking about starting a podcast, because there are going to be times where you're not going to have enough time to research, or there's going to be times where it's not fun and you don't want to do it, or like, something pops up. So having that kind of baseline of something you're really passionate about, something you're really excited about, something you're super knowledgeable about is a really great starting point. And it's going to come through. Like, I think it really comes through in what we're doing. 'Cause as you said, like if we haven't seen the movie that week, like, we're excited to talk about it. If we have, we're even more excited to talk about it. Like, it comes across because it's something, as you said, we were going to do anyway. We were going to spend that time anyway. So we took something that was ours and we made it public and kind of welcomed people in. And that does take a ton of pressure off of it. It makes it feel like it's just something that is, kind of inherent to our day to day versus like one extra thing we need to do, which I think is, you're right, it makes it less scary and it's a huge
Exactly.
thing.
It makes it fun too.
Yeah.
Like, especially, and that's one thing I was like, a live audience. And then I was like, oh no, that's my favorite part now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Actually,
I can't,
yeah.
people can't watch this while I'm doing it. But I love the live studio audience.
Yeah, and I was thinking back earlier today about like our first episode, and please, if you're hanging out with the live studio audience, feel free to just drop in a question, just throw a Q colon in front of it. I'll find it anyway, but if you want to ask a question all about it, we're collecting them and then we'll go through them here. But our first episode, so I taught you into doing this, Ecamm centric podcast concept where we have this live studio audience. We live stream every single episode as our recording to YouTube on most Thursday nights, we joke. But our first one, and probably our first, like, I don't know, 5, there was no one on. Like, it was like us, like, energy, pretending that someone was on, or like understanding that someone might pop on, so having to keep the energy up. And so it's, I always joke that like everyone's like, oh, you can't get started like this until, you have like, you've found your people and you've like really, researched and thought through your audience. I feel like for us, we just started and kind of, we're like, well, there's going to have to be an audience because other people want to watch movies and other people are of our age and generation and want to get nostalgic with us.
Yeah.
But there was no one there for that.
We did really pick, like, for our, especially our generation, we picked like nostalgic cult classics.
Yeah.
So it's like, that people are going to look up like Empire Records or Hackers or, stuff like that. So
our people will.
Our people will, yes.
As Andy says, podcasting should be fun. If it's not, your audience will be able to tell and they won't want to listen. It's really true. Keeping the energy up is hugely important. All right, we have a couple questions in. So Mark is hanging out with us. Hey, Mark. Mark asks, I'm curious about the option for a call-in feature to a broadcast. Using Zoom is one option, but an inbound phone call to an RCP can work as well. So that's a Rodecaster Pro for Nat and for anyone else that's confused. Looking for both tech and flow best practices. This one actually, this is a really great question. It's something a lot of people want to do. So they have this concept of like, it's either you or you and a co-host, but you want people to be able to call into your show. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. As Mark said, you can certainly use Zoom. Ecamm now has a Ecamm for Zoom built-in integration. You can use what's in your built into a Rodecaster Pro, which is a mixer. If you have that physical device on your desk in your studio space, you could actually honestly use Ecamm's interview mode, which is what we're using today. I know that it forces video and audio, but I could technically like remove Nat from camera. Like, okay, here, let me unlock the scene, right? So if I unlock the scene, bye, Nat. There's her name. So wait, let me put her name back.
I just pinned.
Yeah. This is what happens when I do to, there we go. So she's camera B. So it's right, but she can still talk. So say something, Nat.
Hi guys. I'm still here.
So you could call in that way is probably an easy way to do it. You could even put like a little photo up. So that's an option for something that you could do. I don't do this a lot, so there might be more people in the comments actually that have an answer to this, but I think this is one of those things that there's a number of different ways you could do it. You need to figure out what works best for you, for the kinds of people that are calling in for your show. We've played around with voicemail. So there's, which gives you just a little bit more control. So there's a number of different, companies and websites. For example, we use podpage.com, and that allows any of our people to leave a voicemail, and then we can just download those files, those audio files, and we can play them whenever we want. So you could do it that way if you want more control. So like to avoid the kind of live call-in stress of like someone might not have their audio connected correctly, or someone might not want to have their camera on, even if it's not going to show on screen, for example. So you could do voicemail as well. And there's a number of different tools out there that will let you do kind of call-in voicemail options. But it's a great question, Mark. What's your show about? We'd love to know.
I love how we're kind of taking podcasting and making it kind of like talk radio.
Talk radio, yeah. We're just really turning it into it's pirate radio.
Like really, we're just taking the internet and now making it back into radio.
Yeah.
Just
radio
with
slash
pictures.
TV. It's like somewhere in between because we're doing the TV side of it. So it
yeah, I love it. I was like,
it definitely is that.
go Gen X and whatever we want to call Nintendo Gen and Gen
Exactly.
Y.
Exactly. So shout out to Mark. Mark is like always here. So thank you so much for hanging out with us, Mark. Mark says, what's your next session podcast process, if any? I don't know if I understand that question. What's your next session podcast process? Oh, like, do you mean
how
like
do
for
we plan our next episode?
planning our next episode? That's a good question. That varies by show too. And actually, I should say it's pretty similar for the Flow as it is for the VHS Club, just because we're doing a lot and we've kind of intentionally left it a little less planned from that perspective, just because we want the opportunity on both shows to take feedback and allow feedback from our live audience to dictate the kinds of episodes we have upcoming. So so on the VHS Club, I think we're actually, which is crazy for us, we're booked out until like mid-August, but that's because we've been doing a lot of guests this summer, which has been great.
We have some pretty cool guests coming up, and we've had some pretty cool guests on. So we had to schedule and plan that. But otherwise, it's like for instance, on the VHS Club, we've been trying to cover the movie Ruthless People, starring Danny DeVito and Bette Midler, for like a year. It feels
we lost Netflix.
And something always happens. Or we had to take a day off, so we'll bump it. So we're a little more organic than like super planned. But when we have guests, we're very scheduled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's the same for the Flow. Like if there's like a series of episodes that we're trying to do and that require guests or experts to come on, then definitely we've planned that out to be sensitive to guest schedules. And we use a tool called Calendly, which allows us to easily book people's calendars so that they have all the information that they need and it shows up in our calendar as well. But that process is like feels like it's deeply personal, Mark, if that is what you're asking. So like there's no wrong, like most things in podcasting. There's no wrong. It's like what works best for you to be able to stay organized and to be able to help facilitate, guests or bringing people onto your show. But if we've totally misunderstood your question, please ask it again and we're happy to answer it.
I think he mentioned that it's an interactive process. So it seems that we did answer the question.
Yeah, okay,
Mark,
good. All right.
I love Kathy.
Yeah, VHS Club Flow. Hi to Kathy. See,
she said the reason we keep bumping Ruthless People is because we're giving Val time to see it.
That's true. So Kathy hangs out with us on both shows, which I absolutely love and appreciate. And Kathy has suggested a lot of great movies too. So that's why we try to keep our schedules somewhat open, because at the end of every episode, we kind of get off track and banter a bit, and we hear what the audience is talking about. And so that helps us to figure out what we want to watch next or do next for an episode. Hey, the Scene Snobs are here. This is another absolutely fantastic movie podcast. So if you're looking for another one, this is a good one. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you have any podcasting questions, you probably know more than us, so feel free to answer or ask.
Help us answer questions.
This is a really great point. So awesome with things. I just love your awesomeness. I love it's great. Someone stopped in public and said, "I like your podcast," and it took a second to realize my show is a podcast. Yeah, there's been like a huge shift over the last, I don't know, few years now, where it kind of, as a little bit pre-pandemic and as the pandemic was like first hitting, everyone obviously was jumping online into the world of video and a lot of live streaming was happening. But now you see like a real blend between like live streaming, recording, like shows versus podcasts. Really, and we've talked a lot about this on the show over the years, but the definition of podcast certainly has changed a lot. And I think if you're taking your show in whatever format that is, whether it's a recorded video or it's a live stream, etc., video or audio, doesn't matter. You're taking that file, whatever your show file is, and you're putting it through a podcast host. So Captivate is what we use for this show. We've actually been using Spotify for the VHS Club just to see the difference between the two, honestly. Mm-hmm. But whatever your podcast host is, you send that file through your podcast host and it goes out to all those players. So to all of the different places where people can listen to podcasts. That's the difference between like a show and a podcast. But even that is changing really rapidly. So, now YouTube is really pushing itself into this space. You could have a YouTube podcast that's still a podcast, also a show, but isn't going out through a podcast host. So it's good to like not overthink it. It's, create it how you want to create it in the space you want to create it. You're going to find an audience. You're going to find, your space, your people, your format, all of that. So, but don't let any of that stop you from starting, because it really is shifting a ton. Paul shouts this out as well. So we are on the Ecamm side, we're launching a new series every other Friday, starting next Friday, called Tech Talk with Doc. So like all of these questions that I can't answer and Nat can't answer will be great for Tech Talk with Doc, because he excels at all of this stuff. So that's starting on July the 12th. Thank you, Paul. Hey to Jeremy, thanks for hanging out. I see Johnny hanging out with us. Andy says, as a podcast host, you probably don't want people to call in case you get all sorts of bad things and people hijack your show. Yeah, right. It's really so there's a bunch of things that can go wrong. So just really understanding the potential for wrong is a good thing. So certainly someone could show up that has like really terrible internet connection or camera or audio. So it could just affect the quality. And maybe that's okay with you, like that's okay with me on my show. If the person's adding value and the format's okay, then that's fine. The person could be straight up crazy. No offense to crazy people, but so someone could call in and say really things you do not want your podcast listeners to have. The person could be crazy to the point that they could say something that gets your show canceled. And whether that just means like super offends your audience, goes against everything that you stand for personally, or goes against the platform's terms of service, right? Yeah. So you could get your show like shut down. You get your YouTube channel like taken down,
under
eliminated.
Review
So it's just it's a really good point, Andy. Worth thinking through like what the structure is. And Mark's like, yes, right? Like privacy, all of the different issues that might crop up with allowing people to call in, which is why voicemail is a good idea. Or maybe then it's like that kind of show maybe is a recorded show. So it's like you can edit. Yeah. Right. So like you maybe you give people a link and they can call in at any point if they want to join or something like that. But then you're controlling it, or you have a big red button you can like slam to eliminate them from the show if they get out of hand. But
makes me think of Conan's lever that he used to have. Yeah. Mind you, that was to play video clips, but like something to like be like, whoa, okay, let's stop.
Yeah. Do at your own risk. Risk. Yeah, exactly, Mark. The surprises that you deal with a live-in flow. I've always been terrified to do it, and mostly, I like for all the reasons I mentioned, but also I just think like there's so many tech issues that you can run into as well, and I feel like I'm at like a mid-level of skill set. Like many of you watching and listening are probably as capable, if not more capable, than I am at this. So I'm always just worried that like it'll crash my internet, or something will like happen, or it'll be like too many things and people on screen and I'll like push something I'm not supposed to push. It's anything can go wrong in that space. Ooh, it's scary. It freaks me out just thinking about it.
Yeah it happens. I see a question from Jeremy.
Yeah, this is a great question about gear. Let's talk gear. Jeremy's studio is really cool.
Yes, that is exactly what happened. Katie and I talked about it and we weren't sure how it was going to go. So we're like, okay, the main thing I need is lighting and a microphone. So I got my, what's the light called again?
Nat has an Elgato key light Air, which I do too. Yeah. I have one. She's weirdly enough, and so maybe smarter people than us can answer this, but I have 3 lights in front of me, right? I have like the Elgato Key Light Air directly in front of me. And then on like either side of it, like this, I have 2 of the Nanlite Pavo tubes. But Nat's lighting looks like as good, if not better than mine. So I'm doing something wrong. Because she's like either like natural light. It could also
be my see-throughness.
Yeah.
Like I'm so white.
You're just bright. You're bright. Not white, bright.
see through. So the light is just like reflecting off of my bones. I don't
Yeah.
know. And then I have my Shure microphone, and I didn't get like the one that Katie has that you can see. I have a smaller one which I can show you. I got this one because it's super cute and it looks like an old timey microphone.
And it's that is not an
And
expensive
it's
microphone.
affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I
and
plan
that
to upgrade as we go through, but
yeah,
and I'm just using I when we had started, when did we start? Just over a year ago?
a year and a half ago at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had just got a new MacBook.
Mhm.
So I don't have a camera. I'm only using my Mac.
Built-in
But
camera. Yeah.
it's only the yeah, it's a newer Mac. And it's not like a super fancy one either. I kind of got like the mid-range Mac. Like I just, with enough memory and speed that I needed, but nothing too fancy. So,
This is super
and
important for
that's it.
everyone to hear. And if you're listening, you'll have to forgive us. You'll have to jump over to the video to see what we're talking about. But Nat's video quality looks pretty darn good for a built-in camera. So all of you who are like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't start until I have like, till I have a Sony mirrorless camera. Like I'm right now,
And they're expensive.
I'm using an OBSBot. Shout out to our friends at OBSBot, but I'm using an OBSBot Tiny 2, which is cheaper than a mirrorless camera, just from a space perspective. But Nat's using her built-in, and again, it's like every bit as good as my camera. So there are some options there. She could also be using her phone too. Like, so, a lot of different phones will connect and use your camera that
Yeah.
way. But yeah, so it's funny. Like, you don't actually need all that big a budget. Honestly, the next thing probably to figure out would be like, internet connection, which we both probably could do better with as far as stuff goes. But even that's tricky, right? So there's
Well, it's tricky where I am because like we don't, it's like you either have internet connection or you don't. Like
yeah,
it's not like you can't pay to have a better connection. Like
yeah,
it's the home internet is just it. You
yeah,
can pay, like there's different companies, but it all
Mhm.
runs through the same lines, It's
Yeah,
so it is what it is
exactly.
here in my area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Tora, thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, throw a Q and a colon in front, and we are answering questions as best as we can today. So Mark says that, yeah, he's got a mute button on the ready. So yeah, you need the like mute
Abort.
button. Abort. Yeah, I mean, every single thing that you add into your show is going to add complexity in some way or another. So whether that's a cool graphic background, a video clip that you're running, that you're playing in the episode, bringing a guest on, bringing multiple guests on, adding in voicemail, rolling audio clips, like everything that a tool like Ecamm allows you to do is going to be taxing your computer, taxing your internet, and adding some other level of complexity to it, that something could go wrong, something could break, the file could get lost. So it's just important to remember that. Not that you shouldn't do it. You should absolutely build the show you want to build, but you can start really simple and add on to it. And it's just important to know that, like, when you do these kinds of things, you need to be thinking about the fact that you're leveling up. It may feel really simple to you, like I just added our names below, but something could happen there, and it's a step up. You're doing a little bit better every time.
Yeah.
Paul says you're glowing. You're glowing, Nat. It's very true. You're very glowy today.
You should see me in direct sunlight. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm on a beach with other people, it's like you could always tell where I am because I'm like, I glow. It's I get and I don't tan. I just get my freckles get a little closer together every once in a while, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's just how I'm made.
Oh,
Sporadically melanated.
So Mark asks, this camera here, this one here is this is the OBSBot OBS bot. I don't like to call it OBS since that's a competitive tool, but it's the Ecamm bot Tiny 2. It is not the Lite. The Lite is newer, and I don't have that one. I have the older one. I have the older Shure microphone as well, because it still works really well, and I don't feel the need to upgrade at this particular point.
And it's pretty.
It's pretty, yeah. We will have, if you're coming to our Creator Camp event in October, if you're not, we have no tickets left. But if you're coming, we're gonna have the Tiny 2 and the Tiny 2 Lite available for you to test and play around with, along with a ton of other gear, microphones and lighting. We're gonna set up a whole bunch of different kinds of studios so you can see all the different options. I just got Oh shoot, I don't think let me see if I can. Oh yeah, sort of. I'm a recovering perfectionist, but I just got this new this new mic
You are
arm.
not in recovery.
I know I'm not in recovery. I'm not in recovery, but
Sorry.
I did just get this new. I did just get this new
The arm.
mic arm because in my space it's a really tiny room and it's a shared space. I share with my daughter, so it's chaos on that side of the lens. Out of the cone of cleanliness is just chaos. But I needed literally a tiny camera. I needed a small camera. I needed like things I could push out of the way. And the microphone was the last issue because I had a stand that was a great stand. It works awesome in the studio. But here in this space, it wasn't working because I had to like have the microphone close enough to capture the audio. It's a dynamic microphone. It needs to be close to my mouth. But so I had it like propped like on my laptop, or I had to have it like on my lap. And after a while I was like, well, this is silly. It's like $100 for a mic arm. And it's made a huge difference because now I can just push out of the way when I'm done, slide it back in, and it's not on me. It's not caught, like it's out of the way of the computer. So thinking through like what your space is actually really matters. And I know sometimes it's hard to wrap our heads around that, but sometimes like the biggest, best, coolest studio spaces don't work for your space. Even if you have the budget, it doesn't make sense for you. So you should think about what gear actually makes sense for you. You're there. So another vampire to hang out with you.
Yes. Us pale people.
Another vampire to hang out. All right, so we're waiting for some more questions to come in. So if you have a question, let us know your podcasting question. What other things did you not know, or what do you feel like you've learned over the last year and a half, Nat?
What have I learned? Well, I would say even more just like since the pandemic started, like good old 2020 there, like February, March 2020, just getting on, because we all went into lockdown around the world. We're on our computers on Zoom or Teams or whatever, and it's how to interact on the camera. So I kind of felt as we kind of got used to that, and if the pandemic hadn't happened and Katie was like, let's start a podcast, I would have not known, like look at the camera. Like I do sometimes, and you'll notice me, my eyes go over, like I'm reading the comments, so I'll like lean over sometimes. But usually like if we're like filming or live, I try to look at the camera more than, so I'm interacting with the audience as opposed to interacting with you directly.
Yeah.
So that's something that I learned through the world that we're in now in recent years. And that's something that, again, if you're not on like a computer centric job, or, if, like that's something you think about, like look at the camera. And I've had some friends comment like, oh my God, like you guys are so professional. How did you like learn how to do that? It's like Zoom meetings, like just
Thanks,
work.
Zoom.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's something that people don't necessarily think about. So before going in, like that was one of the things. What else? And comfortable space. Like if you look through some of the old videos of our show, like I change spaces sometimes, and it kind of depends on the environment. Like if we're doing something in the day, I'm not always here in my office because I have a window. So sometimes direct sunlight can, luckily it's a bit cloudy today because direct sunlight can really like wash me out.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if I draw the curtains a bit, it like will totally white out my whole face. So it's like just figuring out what space I need at what time of day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I close all my windows. So if you like you have your browsers open and all your windows, like just shut everything down, and that helps too with the internet connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else like was a big thing. I feel like podcasting was easy-ish for me to get into because I had already forced myself to do so much live streaming and video work through Ecamm that it felt easy. The things that I struggled with, and honestly I still struggle with a little bit, are setting up everything to start was actually wildly easy. So like if you can follow steps, you can set stuff up. Like, it's like you have to have a podcast host, you fill up all the stuff that they tell you to fill out. We do this live recording process the same as the flow. So we needed a YouTube channel. So we set up a YouTube channel. What's hard for me is now that we've been doing it for a year and a half is that, it's consistency in promoting. So there's a ton of really great tools out there. And actually, Mark is suggesting a couple of them here too, right? So like Descript is one of them. Is like a really great way to be able to clip up your files and grab transcripts and add captions to, to everything. So there's like, for all of us like Mark and certainly like Nat and I, we are not editing people. Like, so, so it's kind of thinking through like the repurposing process on how to make it really seamless and easy to get into this habit. And so I've been thinking about that a lot, and I've been thinking about just like what those steps are within the habit, and thinking about like how to delegate's not the right word, but like Nat and I are like partners in this, right? But I'm a total control freak, so I just do a lot of stuff myself without even telling her. So I could say I could say over to you, Nat, this way, and hand stuff over. So it's that stuff that I think is hard
so far.
Yeah.
Not that it matters. Well, so a little bit about me. I have long COVID. I caught COVID. And long COVID and it happens actually a little more often than we like to admit, but sometimes you get a permanent, forever chronic illness because of your COVID infection. Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of rehab and recovery, and only like, I'd say even in the past 6 weeks, finally I'm starting to feel almost like a human being. Mm-hmm. So Katie, being like a super perfectionist and wanting to just like do all that, has really helped me like heal in my personal life, mm-hmm. and still be able to be in this podcasting space. So it's like for anybody with chronic illness, because there's a lot of us now, it's also like, still do it. You can still do it. You can still manage. Ecamm helps because it's super helpful. Like once you set your scenes and pick everything that you like and have your aesthetic and have your scene set, you can just keep using, you just sort of log in and do it. And there's like minimal changes you have to do. Mm-hmm. You don't need to have a lot of different scenes. Katie and I like to switch through a few. But like it helps, these tools help make podcasting manageable if you have other things in your life that might be holding you back from joining the podcasting space. Yeah. So that's like a whole other thing too. Like some people, absolutely. I know a few people who are like, oh, I couldn't do it because, I'm like always so tired, and I always have like, I have this going on and that. And I'm like, yeah, but it could be a lot easier than you think it is.
Yeah. So, and like huge shout out to, I see Obs in the chat. So Obs is a traumatic brain injury survivor. And so she lives with, all kinds of challenges, in many ways similar to what you've gone through, Nat, and some of the challenges that you have. So
long COVID has a lot of TBI rehab because mm-hmm. it causes a lot of similar issues. I did like a year and a half of TBI rehab. Right.
So Obs, but Obs does her show often, and she's just realized that she needs to, and maybe Obs, you can answer differently for this. Maybe this is not the actual like impetus behind it, but Obs does a show where she does a morning minute-ish. So she's only on really briefly, and she's just learned to get really consistent with what she can handle and with what's valuable for her and for her audience. Exactly. So there are, I think it's a super good point. All right, a couple more questions coming through. So Tora says that starting to notice things I freaked out about. I need this cam, I need this mic, and viewers are kind of like, meh.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It matters as much as you want it to matter. So I would say, like, if I'm running a huge webinar and I'm doing it for a client and I've charged money for it and they have a set of expectations, the gear that I use and the quality and the professionalism that comes through there is going to matter a whole lot more to me than it is in the podcast I do with Nat. Because the podcast I do with Nat, I'm doing it for fun. I'm not trying to make millions of dollars. That would be fun, but I'm not. Like that's not the main goal, right, of it. So obviously in that case, like if things go wrong or if we don't have the most expensive cameras, etc., I'd rather prioritize making it happen and making it fun and making it feel like a great experience for us and for our viewers over how it looks, what the professionalism is. So it matters as much as you want it to matter, or as much as the actual value like financial value of it matters. Like if you're doing it for a client or you're doing it for yourself, but it's, you know, the expectations are high on your viewers end, then yeah, you might need to step it up. But yeah, it is a good thing to realize and to learn more about. Mark, yes, don't judge me. I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi because my house is super old and we just have not gotten around to getting the actual Ethernet like wired upstairs here. So
Yeah.
I'm working on
To be
it.
fair, I'm on Wi-Fi too. I could go downstairs to the basement and like hardwire in, but I haven't done something like that since um, the 90s and LAN parties when I was younger. Like,
Uh,
which
yeah.
haven't done that in decades.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
Yeah.
Kathy, I'm going to answer this even though I sort of answered it. So it depends on the podcast. So for this particular podcast, The Flow, what we do is so we live record our episode out to YouTube every Tuesday at noon Eastern. And then those files get handed over to our incredible editor, Luis, who then like edits it. It's a lighter edit than what some people do because we want it to feel a little bit more kind of raw and authentic, but he works really hard on it and edits it. And that episode a week later, so the following Tuesday, gets released out as a replay video that's like trimmed down, edited on YouTube, and then the audio from that then gets sent out across the different podcast players so that it updates as a new podcast on our episodes. We use a combination of Descript and Opus are the two kind of video editing tools, and I know that there's overlap between them, so people may choose to use one or not the other. I use both because I have a good relationship with them and I like the tools, and at Ecamm we can afford to use both. Descript I'm using for the transcript and to populate the chapters so I can like visually read and see like where all of the different markers and chapters are to be able to populate the chapters. I'm using it predominantly for that aspect. I don't do editing with Descript for the most part for this show because Luis does a lot of it. And then Opus is wonderful because I can literally just grab the YouTube link and I throw it into Opus and it's just like, here are all the clips and gives you a rating on it. Like you can change the length of it. It automates that process and makes it really fast and easy so that we can promote the show. I think I should say we also do use Scenery to upload the files because there's an integration from Ecamm through into Scenery. Scenery is a video editing tool. Again, we probably use more tools than you would need, but they do all serve a slightly different purpose. So maybe you need all of them, who knows? But that's a video editing tool as well that gives you a little bit more functionality. It's much more of a kind of a traditional editing tool, but it's way easier than like any of the Adobe tools, for example. So that's an option there. For what we do with Nat and I, as I said, it's a bit of a hot mess because I still have not gotten into like a good process, but we do use Opus, which will probably be news to Nat. She'll be like, what? We use Opus for our, clipping up the videos and getting those vertical videos out that then we share across Instagram and Twitter and as YouTube Shorts. And then I record, and I've had Nat do a couple of these, but I actually record like fun fact videos. So they're like, three movie facts you want to know about this movie or that movie. I just record those in Ecamm, like using just switch over my scene to a vertical scene, and I like drop the little VHS box image in and I record them, and I try to keep them to less than 59 seconds so that they show up as YouTube Shorts. And those have gone like viral for us. so we've had like some of them that have been, thousands of people that have seen them, which again is like a big deal for us because we're fairly new and we're growing. So yeah, I guess it's just thinking through like what works best for you and what the frequency is. But again, I would like encourage you to remember that it's okay to make changes to your process. It's okay to like not have a process nailed down when you first start. If you can get actually just creating the episodes, the rest of it you can get better at. You can ask for help. You can grow. You can do it way too much and realize you can't handle it and then backtrack it. You can do next to nothing and then grow from there. So there's a bunch of different ways to approach it. Don't let it stop you
And there's
from
always
starting.
new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's always new things coming out. Like we weren't using, which I did know we were using Opus. You have told me that. But I remembered, yay. we weren't using it before. And then it's like you just happened to mention like, oh yeah, I'm using this. And it's like, oh yeah, that's cool. I like that. And, so we're trying different things, and some things work and some things don't. And, it's just a process, and especially in a digital space, there's always something new happening and always something new is going to come out and a new trend or whatever. So like we kind of adapt as you go,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
don't stress about it.
Don't stress about it. There's always going to be something, again, like my shirt says I'm a recovering perfectionist and it's misspelled, which like, but I love. so there's always going to be something that you're going to be nitpicky about, or something that like someone else is doing better than you, or something that where you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Always, no matter how good you think you are, no matter how far along you've been doing it. So don't let those things stop you from just doing it and having fun. I think it matters.
Exactly.
Lots of questions. All right.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for us was just to start. I think that was the hardest part. Like once we started, then we're like, okay, we got it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Did. And the reason it took us so long to start in many ways was actually because we were, mostly me, being super nitpicky about what it looked like. I was like, oh, I had this like background that had like a retro TV in it. And I was like, that's fun. And then I was trying to like put our video into the TV, and I was like, I don't really like that. And then I was like, oh, I'm out of time. I'll work on this next week. I'll work on this next week. And then at one point we were both just like, this is dumb. We should just do this. And so we just we're like, how about we just make it simpler?
Yeah, and it did work out well because that was around the time that I was really hitting my long COVID symptoms badly. And like, FYI, there's no medical treatment, but there kind of is. And there's definitely medical, it's super complicated. But it took me a while to find my groove too. So it's like, I didn't push Katie either because I was like, no, we could do this. Like, let's set up time. But I didn't, because I was like, it's giving me time to find my groove to get into this space as well. So
yeah, we started when we needed to start.
Super well.
But yeah,
exactly.
But
that was the hardest part. Was the like, okay, let's go.
This is a great question. Tora asks, do you plan out topics with an intent strategy, or just go with the flow as things come up that can easily become topics? Again, this is like a personal one. For both of these shows, and it probably actually relates more to the flow than to VHS Club. VHS Club, we're literally working through like thousands of movies from the 80s and 90s. So we're just picking movies as we feel sometimes like they, or as the audience feels like it. With the flow, the point of this show is to teach people how to podcast and how to get into video podcasting and what the trends are and what the important things are people need to know. And so we're paying attention to the questions that we're seeing pop up in episodes like this. And we're paying attention to what people are talking about out in the internet. And then we go to a lot of podcasting conferences and events. So we're paying attention to what people are interested in and what the topics are for all of the speakers that are speaking at these events. So there's a lot, I think, that goes into that part of it. But then when it comes down to each individual episode, we do have some flexibility in saying like, oh, well, we would really love to have Colin Gray from the podcast host on. He does a really amazing job. He's an expert. We see him at a ton of events, but he's in the UK. So his schedule's been difficult for us to match up with like Hawaii, East Coast, and the UK. So that's taken longer for us to plan it, right? But that's okay, because whenever we pop that in, it's still going to be relevant content because it's still kind of in our content pillar of talking about how we can help people get into podcasting. So there's lots of different ways. So AI is really helpful in this space if you haven't played around with it, like tools like ChatGPT. There's a ton of other, AI tools that are out there to help you kind of say, here's what I want to be talking about, or here are like the things that I want my podcast to be about. And it'll actually give you topic ideas or give you common questions that you can answer. Things like that are a good way to start.
Yeah.
Scrolling through lots of Mark's not judging. Okay. You're judging a little though. I can tell. George is helping. George says, have I considered the Ethernet extenders? Yes. I have a mechanical engineer for a husband who does not allow me to touch any of these things. There are a few things that he's like very nitpicky about, to overuse this word this episode. And among them are like hanging any kind of pictures or paintings. I'm not allowed to do that because I just do it. And I'm not perfectionisty about it, and it drives him crazy. And then anything related to laser
level.
Exactly. Anything that relates to like wiring or plumbing, I'm not allowed to touch. So yes, George, you're probably right. I will send that through to the one in charge here. I love it. Yeah. Same with Tora. It's like sometimes, there are challenges. Sometimes there are challenges. There are tools out there. And this is what I need to like set up more. So at Ecamm, we worked a lot with a company called Speedify, and they are awesome at kind of helping to bond together different internet sources. So, my phone and my Wi-Fi, and, if you had like a hotspot or different things to make your internet connection stronger wherever you are. So that we always highly recommend them. I use them endlessly in the office, but stupidly have not set them up here at home for a personal account for me. So I need to do that. The challenge that I've been trying to think through more, and I just need to talk with them, is like I only have just the one phone, right? So it's like I could use my phone and then my Wi-Fi, but that may not get me too far because I have very little phone connectivity here in my middle of nowhere house. So yeah, it's always stuff to think through, definitely. I'm scrolling. Yeah, it's true. I know you can't tell stressy people that they're not allowed to stress out. That's true.
You're still gonna stress. It's more because I'm also stressy people, but it's it took me this time. Like I realized I'm stressing myself out for nobody but me.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I still do it, I'm getting better at being like, I'm recognizing that the stress that we put on ourselves doesn't bother anybody else.
Yep.
And you just have to be like, and let that go.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to do, but the more conscious you become of doing it, the more easier it is for you to be like, oh, right. I'm like, Nat, just let it go. And like, you're the only one that's stressing about this. Just let it go, Nat. And it works, but you have to get used to recognizing that happens.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
But you will still get stressed. Like, let's be honest.
Up here,
yes,
right?
Simply Obs. Oh, I love that.
Your friend, you need to have a good network. Obs's friend said, just do it. And she did. So, and her wife was there behind. Like you really just got to find someone that can hold you accountable. And if you don't have those people, we're your people. Come hang out. Ecamm.com/community. We'll tell you to go ahead and do it. This is a good space to get motivated. Speedify, I believe, works with hotspots. Go ahead, Nat.
Sorry. I was just going to say, sometimes somebody else just giving you the permission to be like, yeah, you could do it. And you're like, you're right, I can, and no matter what your situation is, it's like, and don't worry about the audience. Cause it's always like, well, who's going to want to listen to me and who's going to care what I have to say. And don't worry about that because your people will find you. Our tribe found us.
Yeah. More people than you would think. I honestly, if I'm being totally honest, I was like, we're going to do this podcast. And basically only our
Doc and Paul
friends and family are going to listen. And even then probably kind of okay, I guess I'll pay attention to this. Not really. And yeah, huge shout out to, so the Ecamm fam showed up. Doc and Paul showed up. Doc brought his people. Paul brought his people. And then we found awesome people who randomly discovered us through the power of YouTube and through, the podcast players, and they show up, and friends who I thought would not care at all. Friends I've barely spoken with since high school, people who are friends of friends. Every time I go anywhere now, they're like, oh, I listened to your podcast episode, or oh, I love that you're doing a podcast. I've always wanted to do that. People who I never thought even listened to podcasts know that it's out there, and it's literally just because I talk about it. Stop being so afraid to talk about it. If it's important enough for you to want to do the show, it's important enough for you to share about it. Be passionate about it. Share about it.
Yeah,
What's the worst that can happen? There's not really that many bad things that could happen, right? All right. Well, we have the creative amplifiers showing off. Yeah. Okay. With your 15 meter, no, just kidding. With your 15-meter cable. Yeah. It's, I could do that actually. I do have some long, I'd have to go up the stairs. I'd probably create a bunch of tripping hazards all over the place. But you know what actually I want to do? Fun fact about Katie's insanely old house. So I'm in this upstairs room. My home was built in the 1700s. So I have a lot of restrictions about what I'm allowed and not allowed to do. There's a historic commission. But I want to knock a door, if you will, into this wall this way. And that would actually take me out into the bonus room, which is where the internet is, where the hardware would come from. So if I did that, it would make things really way easier. I wouldn't have to go up and down the stairs. So options, always options. For
Yeah.
me, the most complicated possible
Yeah,
choices. But
yeah, it's like that's a home renovation, Katie. That's
yeah, you
that
can
is
solve it
not
with
on
power tools.
everybody's list of what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, just like that, we're like almost done the hour. So if you have any other lingering questions, get them in now. And if you're like, wait a second, I thought Doc was the co-host. He is. He's at he
Yeah,
is at
yeah.
Podcast Summit. So if you're in the Atlanta area, or you're going to be in Atlanta on the 4th and the 5th, it's a holiday. So you know, what else are you going to be doing? Go air condition and learn some podcasting. It's called
I
Podcast
don't know.
Summit. Go ahead, Nat.
I don't know who I'm all of my ads on social media, on anything on the internet has been for Podcast Summit. And I don't know who did the ads. But their ads aren't annoying and I love them and they're super cute and fun. And I don't know what podcasters they had do it, but I love them. Like I need to actually maybe pay more attention to the ads and figure out who they are. I know the
Yeah.
ads for Podcast Summit, but I've been seeing it for like at least a month, like every day. I'm on, like I turn my phone on, I'm like, oh, there's those guys for Podcast Summit.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
they're super fun.
a lot of them have David Shands in it, and if who is the creator of Podcast Summit, so podcastsummit.com.
Okay, so probably
That's
him.
probably who you're
Seems super
seeing.
cool.
Yeah, he's awesome. And if you want to learn more about David, even if you can't make it to the event, so his podcast is called the Social Proof Podcast, and we released our first episode back this season was last week. It was a pre-recorded episode, an interview with David. So if you're hanging out, you can swing to flow.ecamm.com and that will get you back to that episode. You can kind of check out Knack. You can watch too. Catch up. But
Well, their targeted marketing works. I'm like, how do they know I'm into podcasts? But no, I'm not traveling at the moment, so can't make it.
Oh, and hey, we got an invite. We'll be there. You know my email, katie@ecamm.com. Drop me an email. I'll connect you in with Nat. We'd love to be on the Video Dadcast. We are not dads, but we feel like we're as cool as dads. So maybe we'll bring our dad vibes.
I have some good dad jokes.
Yeah, we have some good
I like
dad
a good
jokes.
pun.
We'll bring the puns. Nat is way better at puns than I am. I am not punny.
That was my father.
Yeah.
My dad. So living with my dad, I much imagine was like living with Robin Williams. Like where everybody I know is like, your dad's so funny. And I'm like, really? You don't live with him. So, but no, he was hilarious. But so yeah, I grew up with a lot of jokes and puns.
Yeah.
No, a good dad joke. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You're right, Mark. If I'm thinking about knocking out a wall, I could drill a hole and run a cable. I'm not thinking about knocking out a wall. Kathy, same thing. We'd love to be on your show and we'd love to have you guys on our show. And honestly, like, see here, everyone new watching and listening, when you put yourself out there and you start talking about it more and you engage with your audience, people want to be on your show. People want to have you on their show. And that's the way that you can grow your show. Like, huge shout out to, we've had like the most supportive, wonderful people ask us to be on their show, want to come on our show. It's still, it's still humbling. So it's a great space. And, once you've found your people will support you and you will support them. Yeah. And it's an absolutely great experience all the way around.
It's so much fun. It's like I have a whole bunch of new friends that I look forward to seeing every week. Yes, Kathleen, we have to have you on to do another dance movie. Inspired us to do like a whole dance movie run, which was so much fun.
Dance movie dance, if you will. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, great. I'm going to hang in there, Nat. I'm going to swing over to our final credits here. I'll keep an eye for final questions on the other side. But if you are brand new, this show is called The Flow. You can find us at flow.ecamm, ECAMM.com. We are a video podcast, so we are available on YouTube, but you can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, TuneIn, and many more. And this show, like all episodes, is brought to you by our friends at Captivate. They are just the best podcast host. And I can actually say that because I use both this one and I've been using Spotify for the VHS Club, and Spotify is not as good. I need to stop and switch back over. I did it as a test and we have definitely passed our test. It's, if you want free, great. Spotify will help you, but Captivate really levels up. They have a growth mindset. There are a ton of features built within this tool to just make it really easy and powerful to get started with podcasting. The costs are pretty low. They are 100% worth it. As someone that has tried both, I can tell you. So definitely swing by and check that out. And we're officially back. So we've been on break for the last little bit, but we are back. Doc will be back with me again. Actually, Doc is back in 2 weeks. Next week, we have a special guest on. Gordon is joining us to talk about the law and podcasting. So bring your legal questions, because I know I have a ton. All the things I should be doing and can't be doing and shouldn't be doing and maybe getting away with. So that should be a really fun episode.
We would also have a lot of questions because we're international, Katie and I. She's in the US and I'm in Canada.
Yeah, what are the rules?
So we're running into certain things where we're like, what can we do? Because the rules are very different for internet usage in Canada than they are in the US.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, so that's next week with Gordon, and
we
then
have
Doc will be
questions.
back the following week. So yeah, we miss you, Doc, but we're covering in your stead. So thank you.
Doc 2.0.
Doc 2.0 has been hanging out with us, and if you want to find Nat and I, and you enjoy our weird banter, you can always hang out with us most Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, over on YouTube. Our website is thevhsclubpod.com. And we're tomorrow night, we're reviewing Independence Day. We're doing a day early so that we can celebrate Independence Day, or at least I can. Nat's in Canada, so less fun for her. But.
Yes. Last night was Canada Day, so we did all of our fireworks and fairs and concerts and celebrations and stuff yesterday. So now I get to do it again for the 4th.
Now you get to do it again for the 4th. And it was weird watching, it was very weird watching Independence Day on Canada Day. I felt very weird.
I didn't, to be fair. I'm watching it today.
Oh my gosh. All right. So final couple questions. Paul's links. Yeah. So Captivate is captivate.fm is where you can find them. They are fantastic. Spotify for podcasters. No bueno. I need to make a move pretty quick here. Mark is asking when the legal questions are. So that's Gordon Firemark, and he is on next Tuesday. So a week from today, same bat time, same bat channel here on YouTube is the live recording. And then the audio episode will drop the following Tuesday across all the podcast players. Tora's standing in for Doc. I got you. We'll figure it out next time. And Maggie says thanks. Thanks, Nat, for hanging out.
It was fun.
So fun. Yeah. I'll see you. I'll see you again in our endless text chain, and I'll see you again tomorrow night for Independence Day.
Sounds good.
Pre-Independence Day podcast. Yeah. It should be absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. And I guess I need to say, Nat doesn't know this one, but we need to say Flow Riders out. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.